Tippy, you did very good today. Yes, you have a David Bowie thing going on. You got a blue eye and a brown eye. This is Tippy, and Mars is circling around behind the camera. I'm sure he'll float in here. Tippy was basically inherited about a year ago. Mars has been with the Guardian since he was about 6 months old, I believe. And then they used to have another dog that was an older dog that I think kept, he was like the, I don't know what you would call it, he was the boss. And so once that dog passed on, we had a different dynamic, and these two have gotten into some fights. At first it was Tippy starting fights with Mars, and Mars just kind of dealing with it. And now Mars has realized I'm bigger and I don't like this, and I'm not starting fights, and Mars is starting to fight back. And we have some scars in the back of Tippy's head from the last dust up, which is what led to me being called in. So in identifying and going over the dog's day-to-day routine in their life, basically this is what I call the perfect storm. The dogs were under-exercised, they had no rules, and they got to tell the humans what to do. Imagine what kind of an employee you would be if your boss said, from now on, you don't answer to anyone, there's no rules, and there's no oversight for you, and whenever you think it's time for you to get paid, you tell me, and I will pay you without any question. You're going to be the worst employee that company has because you have no motivation to listen or do the things they want to do. And I think that's a little bit of a scenario that we've had. And the Guardians had a really great situation with the dog that kind of kept the peace. But when that dog passed on, now we have to address the issue. So in order to flip what I call the leader-follower dynamic, we went over how we can add rules and structure. Rules and structure are important because dogs are all about what they see us do. They don't understand that we go to work and we're doing something hard at the office or whatever our job is. They just see that we're not here. They think we're partying like a rock star. And we come back in, and then we don't act like leaders because we're not enforcing any rules. They get to tell us what to do. All these things confuse the dog into thinking that they're our peers or they're superior to us. Now, just like if we're a parent and we have a child that is engaging in a lot of unwanted behavior, and we tell the child you can't do that. Don't get tattooed. Stop smoking. Stop cursing. They keep on doing that, and they started doing it. You know what? You're not allowed to hang out with Pat anymore. Because once you started hanging out with Pat, that's when you got a tattoo. It's when you started getting a smart mouth, and that's when you started smoking. So, because I can't reach as a parent the child, I'm going to push my boundary out past the child to protect the child. These dogs, I think, both think that they're in charge, or they're pushing for it because they don't see the humans acting like leaders, and the humans don't listen to the dog. So I think that stresses them out. These dogs are also highly, highly energetic, and I think that's a big. The lack of exercise is not the reason for the fights, but is a big contributing factor. You can let him out if Mars needs to go outside. And so exercising the dogs is not going to take away or fix the problems, but it's going to make fixing the problems much more manageable, and also eliminate a lot of situations the dog might get into fights if we help them practice different scenarios. The video above this, I go over a technique, how to teach your dog to not jump up on you or be excited. And so the Guardians need to practice that when people come home and any other activity that gets the dog super excited. Now, because the dogs have a tendency to get into fights when they're overexcited, we want to identify where are the excited activities that participate. Well, when people come in the door, that's an excitement activity. When we're feeding the dogs, when they're trying to come in the door from outside, when somebody's getting attention, they get jealous, when there are treats around, when there's a special bone. So if we start categorizing and identifying what these scenarios are, we can actually start helping the dog practice them by recreating the situation in a controlled environment and teaching the dog one step at a time by breaking it down into individual steps. Off camera, I went over a procedure, how you can help your dog stay calm throughout the leashing process before you take them on a walk. And it's basically breaking it down. The first step is walking to where the leashes are kept. As soon as the dog walks in front of me, it's trying to take the leadership position. Well, as soon as you walk in front of me, I lose interest and I go sit down. I don't chastise the dog, I don't correct the dog. Just what the dog wants to have happen isn't happening. It'll take several times, but eventually I'll be able to walk all the way to the door where the closet where the leashes are kept, and the dog stays behind me. Next step is reaching for the leash. I might only reach this high, or maybe I'm just reaching for the handle. The dog starts getting excited. I pull my arm back and I go sit down. Now the tip, one of the secrets of this is practicing at the times when you're not actually planning on taking the dogs for an exercise. So they just once out of every 10 times that she goes to the closet, we actually go for a leash or a walk. So they're not associating the same thing. They don't get as crazy. And after a while, if it becomes drill, 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 then they go through the leashing process very calm and without any incident between the dogs because they're much calmer and they're not in that frantic state of mind where things can escalate quickly. Now, we went over ways to add rules. Some of the rules I went over would not be allowed, the dogs not be allowed on the furniture. These dogs were not just jumping on the furniture, they were like almost running up the wall and climbing on top of people that were on the furniture. For dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or status they have. So by not allowing the dogs on the furniture, we can, first of all, protect something that helps the dog see us as a leader, acting like a leader. And also the dog literally sees a distinction. The dog is down there, I'm up here. So I'm helping it see me on a different level. So what I usually suggest is 30 days or as long as the problem's still going on. This should become a privilege. And after maybe 60 days, the dogs are not calm and he's not baring his lips, all these problems are gone, then it becomes, you know what, with an invitation, I can invite one of the dogs or both the dogs, my prerogative as a human, I invite the dogs up. I'm making an invitation, and this is a privilege for good behavior. So if we invite the dog up and it starts barking, now you have to get down. Or if I invite the dog up and then it goes down and get a drink of water, when it comes back, it would need another invitation to get up. Or if he's up here and he starts baring his teeth at Mars, then he has to get down. Now for that one, make sure, again, if Mars is right here and he bares his teeth and I make him get down, I might create a fight. So what I would do is maybe toss a treat over there so that Mars goes away, or step up and put my butt to Mars and then tell him to get off the couch. All right, let me see, what else? I'm remembering something I forgot to go over the Guardian. So if you want to disagree, use the escalating consequences that I'm going to tell you after I finish filming this video. I'm not going to share it in this video because this is one of those things you have to hire me to find out what it is. Let me see, but other rules, you have to sit at the door. If I go to the door and I say sit, if they don't sit within about 3 seconds, I walk away. I'm only going to say it once. And the Guardians need to get in the habit of not repeating commands to the dogs over and over. So if I say it once, the dog doesn't sit at the door, then I walk away and I sit down somewhere. Don't stand, sit down somewhere and wait 1 minute. Ask Siri or Alexa to give you a 60-second timer. At the end of that timer, go to the door and say, sit. They're going to sit, then I walk away this time for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, next time for 8 minutes. So each time the dog doesn't comply, it has to wait twice as long. I have leverage in this situation. The dog wants to go outside. In order to get it, it has to do the smallest thing possible, sit for a dog. And as soon as it sits, I open that door there's remote control in the dog's butt. After a while, the dog will go sit at the door as its way of saying, I would like to go outside. At first, you do it with whatever direction the dog wants to do, then do it with both directions. So the dog sits before coming or going. Do it for the front door as well. If you're out and about and you go to a store, someplace that allows dogs, make them do that. On walks, you practice sitting at every corner before you go on the street. It's adding a little bit of structure to these things. Guardians should also not be, the dog should not be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating. And you use the third escalating consequence that I haven't told the Guardian who's filming this yet, but she will know after I watch this. You'd use the third escalating consequence to move that dog out of the kitchen behind. This is how you would establish an invisible boundary. You can also do the same thing at the door. That's kind of what I did when Dad came home. And if you have problems with that, let me know. I can send you a video to show you how to claim the area around the door. However, for these dogs, because he redirects towards him, I would not practice it with these guys. Anytime that anything is going to be excitable, you want them to practice it separately till both dogs know how to behave perfectly. Only then would you bring them back together. And I wouldn't have a real guest coming through the door. I would have somebody, a member of the family, practicing, pretending to be a guest, so that I take the pressure off of me thinking like, oh, somebody's waiting outside. I'm making them wait too long while I settle the dogs down. No, that person's in on it with me, and they're going to stay out there for 10 minutes if it takes 10 minutes, because the most important thing is achieving the state of mind and energy that we want from the dogs before we take the next step. A lot of us rush through life and we teach the dog to be more despondent, more aggressive, more jumpy, more whatever it is, because we move faster when they do that. We're going to go the opposite way. I'm going to move slower. I'm going to stop as soon as you do the wrong thing. Right? Yes. Okay, so also not being allowed in the kitchen when we're eating food. When a human's eating food, not within 7 feet of the human eating food. If he's eating a bone and Mars is coming around, and he starts baring his teeth or Mars starts getting too close to him, I would get up and use the third consequence to move him away so that he understands, look, Mom and Dad have my back. I don't have to bare my teeth at him. Mom and Dad are going to make sure Mars respects my spaces so I don't have to do it myself. So we went over rules. Like I said, I'll show you how to enforce them here in a second. We also went over things like passive training, which is what I just did there. He walked a little circle and he came back to me on his own. I didn't ask him, I didn't entice him, I didn't give him a treat. I have a handful of treats. But as soon as he came back to me, sit. I just did it again. When he came to me, I petted him and said, come. I didn't ask him to, he did it on his own. I just recognized and rewarded him. Right there, he came and he sat down. He was already there, he just sat. I recognized and rewarded the sit. Now, when the dogs do this, I call this passive training. Only say the command word of what they're doing. Not good sit, just sit. Not dog's name and sit, just sit. Not good boy, just sit. So every time the dog comes to me, I'm going to pet it and say, come. Every time it sits down, I'm going to pet it and say, sit. Every time he lays down, I thought we were going to lay down, I was going to give you another one. I pet him and say, crash or chill or whatever the word is that you want to use. He's looking for treat crumbs. We just practice a focus exercise, which we'll talk about here in a second. Passive training is one of those easy things because you're teaching the dog that if you do this activity that we like, because we're going to use the come and the sit and the down. Crash. Remember, you have 3 seconds to correct or reward your dog. So as soon as the dog lays down, we pet him and say crash. And if somebody else in the house sees the dog did something I didn't recognize, and she says to me, reward, I look at the dog and I'm just, if he's standing, I'm assuming he came to me and say come. If the dog's sitting, I pet it and say sit. And don't argue and don't delay. By the time they tell you you're already late, you only have like 1 or 2 seconds left to reward the dog for that activity. But after a while, the dog will start coming in, offering those behaviors because that's what now gets your attention, where before these dogs were nudging, jumping up, and climbing up on top of the humans. Now, when the dog jumps up or nudges me for attention, let's see if he'll do it here. Sit, sit. That time he nudged me very lightly, but at the time, these dogs are pretty aggressive about asking for attention, and the humans would pet them. Anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're rewarding and enhancing. So every time they did that, they made the dog more inclined to do that in the future. And if one dog sees he did it, well, I'm going to do it too because that got him a reward. Now they're competing to be defiant or nuisance behavior. So what I do for this is if he nudges me or he jumps up on me, I would tell him to sit. When he sits, I pet him under his chin, and I would say the word sit and only the word sit 1 time within that 3-second window. So when he tells me what to do, nothing happens anymore. But when I tell him what to do and he does it, he gets paid. He gets a reward. He gets a benefit. Crash. That makes him more inclined to want to do that in the future. Matter of fact, what will happen is he's going to come and start sitting in front of you to prepay and ask for attention. When he does that, make sure you do, again, pet him and say sit or whatever the reward is. For petting with a purpose, I say paycheck. So if somebody comes to the room and sees I'm petting the dog and he's standing and I'm petting him, that person says paycheck, they just say, I think you may have forgotten to pet with a purpose. Because we won't realize how often we're petting without a purpose or for the wrong times. So if somebody says paycheck to me, I immediately stop petting and I say sit or crash. In this case, he crashes. I pet him and say crash. I can tell the person, I asked him to crash before he came in. When he heard you coming down the stairs, he stood up and I continued petting him, and David said that's okay, because it is. They have to either prepay for the attention or change their state. If he's sitting here, ask him to come and sit over here. Ask him to lay down. Just do something different. So petting with a purpose and passive training are the easiest things that you can do that will have the biggest impact on your dog if the humans get in a habit of doing it. It's going to take the humans about 1 month to 2 months to get in a habit of doing that. If they do, every time you pet your dog, it becomes a mini training session. Now I'm going to show you how to get your dog to come to you by using a hand motion. So I'm going to get him to move away by tossing a treat. Just keep the camera on me. What I'm going to do is hold my hand like this. And this looks like I'm holding something. There's nothing in my hand. To get him to sit, I go in an arc over his head. As soon as he sits, I lower it, let him lick it off my hand, say sit, or whatever the command word is, and pet him under his chin. We always want to pet on the chin to facilitate that nose-up orientation, so proud dogs look up. But if he's not coming to me, I hold my hand up like this, then I start doing this. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog, and when he gets where you want, then raise it over his head. Once he sits, lower it and pet him, and give him the treat and say sit. We're not always going to give him a treat, so if I always use this hand motion, and I go to petting him, that's pretty much the same thing. This is what I meant about earlier. This is a perfect example. This is pretty subdued to how he was acting when I first got here. And again, you see him growling. He's disagreeing with him being in the status also because I have treats, and he doesn't want him to get the treats that he wants to get. So we've created a situation where the dogs are going to compete for attention. Off. That's how I teach dogs to get off, is I just toss a treat at the floor. So sit. As soon as they get down, then and look at the treat, I say the word off. Now, they taught him to shake, and he likes to, see if he'll do it here. He was putting it, there we go. So if you reach, pull back, and keep pulling back. You're doing a great job of demonstrating now. So every time he pulls it up, I back away. Every time the dog goes down, I reach towards and try to re-engage with him. Again, we're helping the dog figure these things out on their own. Sit by simply stopping, sit when he does the wrong thing, and starting when he does the right thing. Off. Now, all right. Let me think, what else do we want to refocus exercise. Remember the focus exercise, don't start using it until you can get it to 20 seconds. Sit. So we'll focus right here. I'm watching his eyes. Focus. So as soon as the dog looks at me, that's when I raise it up. Make sure you go to your nose and then go straight here. You want to maintain the dog's field of vision. So you should be able to see the treat and the dog's eyes as you're delivering it. Now first it's going to be 1 second, 1 second. Eventually it's going to be 1 second, 20 seconds. But don't jump and skip seconds to get there. Go by 1 second at a time. I usually do about 12 treats, and because these guys are a little bit insulated, we're going to tear the treats in half. That'll make them last twice as long. Focus. And eventually, once we get to the point where they can focus anywhere inside, but again, separately, the other dog's in the other room. Eventually, we would have them in the same room with one dog here or one dog there. We're practicing the focus, but they've mastered it. But when we get to that stage, next step is to go when it's a nice day outside and practice with one dog only. Let the dog sniff around the yard first. And then after it gets done sniffing and comes back to you, sit down and show them you have treats and practice playing this game again. But at this point, I'm going to go back to 1 second, focus. Maybe for the first 3 or 4 treats. Once he gets to the point where he's just staring at you, not looking around, then we go to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and work yourself back up to 20 seconds outside. The next step is when we're on walks. If he is reactive to dogs on walks, we're walking down the street, I might have a treat like this and say, focus, focus. And so I can redirect him to look up at me as we're walking around the street. Now we also want to talk about some maintenance things. He likes to bark at people that are passing by. And the house is not super high, but it does look down a little bit. We have a big picture window here, and there's a window right by the door. And the window by the door has all kinds of nose marks. I'm sure he's putting his nose on there, barking when people come by. Well, every time he sees somebody come by and he barks at them, he thinks he made them move away. Focus. So that's a good example. He was starting to I think he was burying lips. There we go. Focus. So what we want to do for there is I would cover the first 3 window panes with probably on the outside of the house with something so that the dogs can't see out. This way they're not practicing. The dogs are kenneled, I didn't realize at the time, but they're kenneled during the day. But if we're upstairs in the backyard somewhere else and the dog's over there practicing barking at somebody who's passing by, that's practicing an unwanted behavior. So we want to eliminate the dog's ability to do those unwanted behaviors as much as possible so that we can help them develop new behavior patterns. I'd like to have the guardians go to a structured feeding. And feeding, remember the human's going to eat something first in 5 or more bites. It can be a chip or a cracker if you're not getting the actual meal. And when I'm doing that, the dogs are outside of the area. And then I'm going to invite him to come in probably first because he's the older dog with probably the best teeth of any dog I've ever seen. For a 7-year-old, they look like a puppy. They're pure white. And when he gets to eat, and he's not allowed to be within 7 feet of him when he's eating. Focus. He was just bearing lips. You're bearing lips at me now. Oh, no, he's doing it to the side. He can hear him. But he's not trying to start a fight with that. He's trying to say, I want some space. Now, there's another technique I could show you, but I really think the rules and structure are going to take care of it with this. If not, let me know. We might need to set up a 1-hour follow-up session and work on showing you some BAT training, which is behavior adjustment training, teaching him to offer a different behavior rather than baring his teeth, maybe asking him to turn and walk away. But if I see that he's constantly pestering him and he's constantly showing his teeth and I don't intercede, then I'm saying you're on your own, buddy. Tippy. I can touch and let him know I'm here without enforcing it. But if I pet him when he's scared, I'm going to make him more scared. So let me know if that continues being a problem after about a month. Up, off, off. But the more that he sees you guys acting like leaders and correcting, because I think what he's trying to do is he's saying, look, your energy is unacceptable. You're climbing up on him is unacceptable. Now, he does some of the same bad problems, but he's trying to correct. I think he's trying to contribute and help because, again, we haven't done a good job of communicating what he can do to help us to make us happy. Well, now if we start petting with the purpose of passive training, now they know what makes us happy. They love it when I sit. They love it when I poop. They love it when I lay down. They love it when I come to them. And they're more inclined to want to do those things. So the focus exercise, going back to that real quick, make sure you practice, get back up to 20 seconds outside. That one you can move a little bit faster because now the dogs already know how to do this. Let me see, I'm probably forgetting a lot of things. If you have any questions or there's dust-ups or problems, make sure you text me or call me. I usually can help people with a quick phone call without needing to go in for a second follow-up session. Sometimes we happen, and there's nothing wrong with needing them. Some dogs with aggression-related issues are one of the groups of dogs that frequently fall into that 1 percentile of mine that need to see me more than once. Hopefully not, but we may. But don't hesitate. If you call me or text me right away, we can make quick adjustments, and then we don't have a big setback. I have a lot of people, I didn't want to bug you, it seemed minor, and then now it's become major. I want you to bug me. I'm single, I got no girlfriend or wife to get pissed off at, so text me. Texting is the fastest way to reach me. I sometimes get 50 emails a day. I just don't have time, and I go through them in the order of rank. If you have a problem, I want you to text me so I can get back to you right away. All right, well, this is Tippy. Mars is laying on the floor over there. Well, and before I sum it up, like I said, I think the biggest culprit here was too much excess energy. So I really think, I'm glad I mentioned. So I'd like the guardians to practice various different things to exercise the dog, and to start a journal and write down the number of repetitions. If you're playing fetch, I'm going to write down the number of times that I fetched. I'm going to do something else here to see if we can use this. And if your dog is crazy for this, you shouldn't use this. But for some dogs, they'll actually chase this thing, and you can get them in the back. There we go. So one of the dogs. So I can chase him, get him. I had somebody that actually had my dogs running laps in my backyard with this thing when it was dark. So if you get a little laser and you can go out there and he's burning. Remember, when the dogs kind of jump up on you or get nuisance, that's probably saying, I have too much energy. You need to exercise me. So what I'd like the guardians to do, fetching is a great way to burn energy. Chasing the laser is great as well, because as long as they're not manic, because they're in pursuit mode. They're really unleashing energy. Walking is a good way for leadership, and it's an exercise, but it's nowhere near as efficient if the dog is really running and being boisterous. So I'd like the guardians to start a journal and write down each dog's name at the top and the date at the page, at the top of the page, and then we're going to exercise them. Count the number of fetches. Count how many laps are on the yard if you're doing the laser, or whatever these things are. And then we get to the point where and then grade the day at the end of the day. Oh, that was a C minus. Next day, we were going to add 10% more fetches here and play with the variables. And eventually, we get to the point where we have an A day. We're like, oh, well, okay, now we have the formula for success to make sure the dogs don't have pent-up energy. So make sure you try to exercise. For him, Mars likes to actually have us chase him. And I think the guardians have tried to pull the ball away or run away from him. I want you guys to use, ride the wave, as I talked about. So here we go. So we got just a kiss got him to stop. And again, the more that he sees that I'm in charge, the less he thinks that he needs to do that sort of thing. But for the fetch, remember, we're going to teach, or I'll go over teaching your dog to drop. So if I'm a dog and I'm holding something, chewing on it, we don't want to do it. But if I'm a dog and I have it like this, I want to take a treat, a high-value treat. I'm going to touch the dog's nose. They'll try to take it with the object in their mouth. Don't say anything. No commands, no lures. Just hold it there. Make it available. As soon as the dog spits this out of his mouth, pop the treat in their mouth and say the word drop. And then don't go for the item. Then they pick it up and they get to run away with them. What we're saying is, if you drop things on command, the human's going to give you something amazing, and you get the original thing back anyways. And now, riding the wave, if the dog brings me the ball or something in the house, I might bounce it in that corner. Dog brings it back to me. Now, once you've established a drop, then you can just say drop and they'll drop it to you, but you don't want to pull or snatch it. That makes it more of a high-value item. And when we're practicing the drop, you want to practice on low-value items, things they're allowed to have at any point. Now, when I play fetch, I actually throw the ball. I say the word 3 times. If I have the ball, as I throw it, I say fetch. When the dog goes over and picks up with its mouth, I say fetch. And then when the dog comes back over to me, I would hold the treat like this or like this. And if the dog drops the ball, they don't get the treat. But if they bring the ball all the way back to you, then I pop the treat in their mouth and I would say fetch a 3rd time. So this way we associate the action with the command word. Now remember, anytime you're using a treat, the dog should get the treat first and hear the command word immediately after. That way the dog's pleasure receptors are activated and they look more favorably on the command word because they heard it when they had something delicious in their mouth. All right, well, this is Tippy and this is Mars and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.